What I want to talk about is culture, and it seems to me next to environmental issues, culture is the great mystery for capitalism. It's the thing that capitalism and the corporation does least well. This has always been a problem, but it's especially a problem now that our culture is so fantastically various and changeable and diverse and dynamic. Just to take one case in point here, this is Chez Panisse, a restaurant created by Alice Waters in 1973. When she created it in Berkeley, it was an obscure, and it was part of that fringe that is Northern California in that very countercultural time. And it was, you know, it was an odd experiment on the far margin of the mainstream culture. 40 years later, it actually is the thing that inspired Michelle Obama to install a vegetable garden on the lawn of the White House. That's how dynamic our culture is. Innovation that happens on the far margin can get to the mainstream in 40 years and make this kind of difference. Here's another measure. This is the way we used to make food. In the night after World War II, we were enthralled with this idea of prepared food, and this is how we prepared it. And now, of course, we're in the throes of a culinary revolution that takes us in the direction of an artisanal approach, where everything is handmade by people you know and who know you, and you know that model has changed utterly. Here's another example of the change. You know, just a few years ago, if you wanted a paint, you would go to a store like this and talk to a guy like Hank. And if you were looking for, if you were in the market for white paint, you could have any white paint you wanted as long as it was, well, white paint. Just a few years later, this is, I snipped this from Sherwin-Williams, their website. And of course, there are now like literally hundreds of whites. And I'm guessing that Hank is a little hazy on the difference between bleached shell and pot of cream. I have to say I'm a little hazy on the difference between those two. So what is the corporation? So our culture's got more dynamic, it's got more changeable, and the corporation, it seems to me, has its work cut out for it. When I thought about the corporation, it wrestles with this problem. I was reminded of the moment about 6 years ago. I was living in a bohemian neighborhood in Montreal, and I was doing my grocery shopping, and a guy pulled up in a Hummer that looked a lot like this, and he got out of his car and sort of started to strut around as if to take, you know, to receive the admiration of the assembled crowd. And of course, Montrealers just, they just gave off this kind of like, if I may use in parliamentary language for a moment, and I'll use English, not the original French, "fuck you, buddy," was unmistakably the tone of the body language. And the guy, you know, he was stupid enough to drive a Hummer, but he wasn't so stupid that he couldn't pick up this message being broadcast by body language. And you could see him sort of diminished by his recognition that he was officially an asshole. And he got back in his Hummer and drove away. The corporation can have some of that insensitivity. That's on the outside. On the inside, those of us who work for the corporation know that really only oneself is welcome in that corporation still. It's still a kind of man in a gray flannel suit kind of operation. And so we have many selves, all of us. You know, the diversity without has become the diversity within. We're fantastically various creatures, each of us, but we're obliged to suspend all of that when we go to work. And the consumer is now a producer. Found this at a train station in Connecticut. It's one of my neighbors, bless them, who decided to do a kind of Dorian Gray treatment of this ad for Donald Trump. And they gave us the portrait of the real man behind the mask. But this is the new consumer, prepared to engage with the commercial message and make it their own. It turns out that 4% of the population is tone deaf. And it also turns out that they all work for the corporation, and they all work in the C-suite, as a matter of fact. And so what's it like living in the corporation, in the C-suite, with culture kind of vibrating in this way, generating all of this variety? It's a little like being caught in a cornfield with with sudden events coming out of the blue at you. So what can we do? This is Robert Johnson, as you know. And I think all of us, as cultural creatives, or whatever you want to call us, are inclined to look at the latest thing. And for anthropological purposes, that means we're sometimes missing the cultural foundations of the moment. Another thing is, we're all fantastically good at picking up faint signals and going, oh, that's interesting. We have the tremendous powers of pattern recognition. Piers and I have talked about this a lot, that we're good at faint tremors. We're spiders on the web, and we pick up these fine signals and we turn them into illumination, and that's splendid. But I guess what I'd like to see us do is keep tracking those tiny tremors as they become ever more, as they begin to insert themselves into our culture and become a more compelling part of our culture. And this is a little bit what the Chez Panisse thing would look like. It's tiny in 1973, and then you track it as it comes into the mainstream. You know, we need cultural metrics here, and most of us are, and I'm especially guilty of this, innumerate. But we need to have numbers. As part of that sensing web thing, we need to have numbers, and we need to be listening to diverse signals here. And I don't know if hush puppies are essential to the number gathering system, but this guy's put them to very fashionable use, as you can see. Listen, here's what we know to be, you know, if you wanted one ethnographic, anthropological datum that there's a crisis in place inside the corporation, it's buzzword bingo. Right? That people have this much additional capacity that they can play a game while they're supposed to be paying attention to the work at hand, and the fact that they can co-conspire to play this game, and the fact that the game is all about identifying the stupid recitation of words that's supposed to make everyone feel like, you know, they've mastered this muscular language and they're in the know, and damn it, we're all headed towards making a decision. You know, buzzword bingo tells us there's something wrong, and you know, it feels to me that one of the things we can do to address this issue is mobilize this quiet, what is now a quiet revolt, should be made a much more public, a much more visible one. But finally, you know, we think about the glass ceiling in terms of gender, and there's a glass ceiling for gender, but there's also a glass ceiling for those of us who know about culture. Getting into the C-suite is fantastically difficult, and it seems to me we have to assault that C-suite as if we intend fully to break that glass ceiling. And if you wouldn't mind, forgive a moment's self-promotion, but this is a book that I worked hard on, and if you would be so kind as to give it a glimpse, I'd be most grateful. Thank you so much.